early on, people can lose more electrolytes than they normally would. There are other molecules in dairy, including cheese and things like that, that can cause a bit of compulsive eating and just saying, I want more, I want more. And any little issues that come up, there's almost always a workaround. I really haven't met anybody that we haven't been able to figure out how to optimize their health and fix their issues. A lot of nutritional studies are being paid for by the food companies. In fact, the vast majority are. The processed food industry spends 11 times the amount of money on nutritional research than the National Institutes of Health. And there's even correspondence back and forth between these professors and the sugar companies saying, hey, we want you to say it like this to push this angle. Fructose goes into your liver and gets broken down into the same byproducts as alcohol. Caffeine is a defense chemical. It's actually a neurotoxin and an insecticide. And a coffee bean is a seed. A seed is a plant's baby, and everything protects its babies more than anything. So that's where you generally find the highest concentrations of toxins.
So if there's someone watching this and they're thinking, I refuse to believe this man that vegetables are bad for me, what would you say to that individual? All right, today's a special one. We are joined by Dr. Anthony Chaffee. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Max. How are you?
I'm exceptional. I'm exceptional. So my first question to you is, how on earth did we get here, right? The whole world, well, when I say the whole world, more and more people are starting to realize, but there's a good percentage of the world that genuinely holds the belief that red meat is bad for them. How do we get here?
Well, it is funny, isn't it? Because for the entire history of humanity and prehistory of humanity, we've understood that meat was not only safe but vital for our health and longevity. So the vilification of meat really came in the 1800s, the early 1800s. They thought that if you ate meat, this would give you more lustful feelings, and so there's the puritanical movement, the temperance movement was such that they they argued that people should avoid eating meat, especially women, because if you ate of the flesh, you could think of the flesh, it give you carnal desires. And this obviously was very, very bad to have sex before marriage. And then sex and lust were sins. Lust was one of the seven deadly sins. So that's how it started. Then later on in the 1800s, more products came out, graham crackers came out, because Sylvester Graham promoted a bland plant-based diet in order to suppress sexual urges. And then this was codified into religion by Ellen G. White, who was one of the founding members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who said that she had a vision from God that said that meat was sinful because it caused lust, and lust was a sin. Therefore, it was evil, it was bad, it was a toxin, it was a poison, just like smoking and alcohol and drugs were. And so they espoused a meat-free existence, and so they just tried to eat more of a plant-based diet. And so they argued for vegetarianism. And then her protege was a kid named John Harvey Kellogg, who grew up to be Dr. Kellogg, who was an extremely influential and famous doctor in America. And he and his brother founded Kellogg Cereals. And this was directly to suppress sexual urges. That's what he said. He said we need to replace meat with plant alternatives to suppress sexual urges and stop masturbation and premarital sex and things like that. And he was actually so obsessed with the no sex side of things that he was actually married for a number of decades. And the stories are to be believed, he never had sex with his wife, and he never actually consummated the marriage. And their children are adopted. And so he was very, very tied up in that. He was a firm believer in that. Since then, they have actually been extremely influential. The nutritional colleges in America and elsewhere, some of these were founded by the Seventh-day Adventist Church members. Lena Cooper founded the American Dietetics and Nutritional Association in the early 1900s. She was a Seventh-day Adventist, and she espoused a plant-based diet. And she wrote one of the first textbooks taught in American nutritional university courses. And it was all plant-based, plant-based, plant-based. It's actually still in circulation. It's actually still being used. Nutritionist Sally Norton got her a degree in nutrition from Cornell University, one of the Ivy League schools in America. And her textbook in the 90s on nutrition was the 44th edition of Lena Cooper's book on nutrition. Again, it was all plant-based, plant-based, plant-based. So they started that out. And they started the nutritional colleges and programs and textbooks to push a plant-based diet. And they've had a lot of influence in the world since then. And then the processed food companies came up because of the Seventh-day Adventists. Seventh-day Adventist Church still own about 20 different cereal companies. Sanitarium Foods in Australia is the largest cereal producer in Australia, is still owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So they enjoy a tax exemption status because they're a charitable organization, a church organization, and they make Weetabix and things like that, which are just god awful, but they definitely fit that mold, that bland plant-based food. And they so now they have this religious ideology that's backed by a multi-trillion-dollar processed food industry. And so they've been actually able to become very influential, pay for a lot of studies. A lot of nutritional studies are being paid for by the food companies. In fact, the vast majority are. So the processed food industry spends 11 times the amount of money on nutritional research than the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. And so the Seventh-day Adventist Church is actually still very, very much a part of that. They actually are involved in the peer review process because they have medical schools and medical institutions like Loma Linda Medical Center in California, where they actually peer review and approve for publication various papers on medicine and nutritional medicine. And so it's very much a rigged game. And they then, obviously they had this giant of an industry that was born out of their original design with Kellogg's and their cereal companies. So now you have this massive industry of plant-based processed foods and this giant sugar industry that came up as a result of that. And so there's this absolutely massive industry. It's a multi-trillion-dollar a year industry, just the sugar industry. And so when evidence was coming out that heart disease started to go on the rise, it almost didn't exist before the 1900s. And then it became the number one killer in the 1930s and started going up. And President Eisenhower had a heart attack. And they said, okay, well, we need to get on top of this. They started looking at it. And there were a lot of scientists and researchers that said, hey, this is actually looks like it's to do with sugar and that sugar is causing this. And so the sugar company started putting out opposition research and started paying off doctors and professors and researchers to basically say what they wanted them to say. And there's even correspondence back and forth between these professors and the sugar companies saying, hey, we want you to say it like this to push this angle, and then responding saying, yeah, that's fine, we'll write it that way so it looks that way. So this is a fraud. And this was actually published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2016, actual internal memos from the sugar companies detailing how they paid off 3 Harvard professors to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it look like cholesterol was causing heart disease when it was more likely to be sugar, and then to exonerate sugar and say that it was safe. And one of those professors was named head of the USDA, and he was the one who authored and published the USDA declaration saying that cholesterol was the cause of heart disease and that we should stop eating it. We should stop eating saturated fat and meat as a result of that. So this was a fraud. So it started out with a ideological bent. Then that spawned a processed food industry that was all plant-based, and now they had to protect their investment with sugar and processed garbage. And so they had to pick a scapegoat. And they picked cholesterol. And and so they ran with that. But subsequently, we've had study after study, meta-analysis with only randomized controlled trials. This is how it works, right? You have epidemiology, and that can form a hypothesis, right? It can't actually show cause and effect. It can never show cause and effect. And yet there are no cause and effect studies that show that cholesterol causes heart disease. And so no one were ever taught in medical school. I was not taught that. We were taught the Framingham study, which is just a correlative study. It can show an association, but association cannot ever prove causation, right? So association doesn't necessarily equal causation because you have an association between ice cream sales and shark attacks. Does that mean that ice cream sales drive shark attacks and vice versa? No, but you can have a summertime where it's a lot more warm and you want to buy ice cream and you want to go in the water where the sharks are, right? So there's a correlation. That doesn't mean there's a cause and effect relationship. So the only studies that we have that point towards cholesterol and saturated fat as being a problem with heart disease are correlational. The only randomized controlled trials that have ever been done have actually shown the opposite. As you replace saturated fat with unsaturated fat and reduce cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, heart disease rates and heart attacks and strokes and deaths from heart attacks and strokes actually goes up. And so why weren't those taught in medical school? Why aren't those taught to people now? Because they were buried. because they didn't like the result, they didn't like the answer, and so they didn't want people to know about it, and so they didn't want to talk about it. And that's why, and then they didn't go and keep doing studies because they already knew what the answer was going to be. So they just taught correlational studies in medical school. Why are we accepting that? We shouldn't be accepting that. And so people should take a look at that. But because it's just been repeated and repeated and repeated, people do accept it. But if you actually look back, what is this based on? It's based on weak correlational evidence. And a lot of these things have been doctored and altered as well. The Framingham study actually had their information misrepresented as well. And so it actually didn't show a correlation between cholesterol and heart disease. It found an inverse relationship between cholesterol and heart disease. As you lower cholesterol, death from cardiovascular disease goes up. And so this has just been a fraud from the beginning, and it's being perpetuated because there's trillions of dollars at stake, and so they're trying to protect their investment. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church is actually still very active. They're extremely wealthy, and they're still pushing this religious agenda as well. It's kind of weird, but those are the facts, and people can look them up.
Mhm. Now, there are some correlation studies out there that suggest that, when you increase fiber intake, it proves to be a good thing, right? And the same thing with red meat. There are some studies that show as you increase the amount of meat you eat, it tends to be a bad thing. Now, there's this concept known as healthy user bias, which really discredits these studies, upon a deeper glance. Can you explain to the people at home how they're able to find these alleged causes?
Well, the thing is that again, you have an association. Association is not causation, and so you have to take that for what it is. It's only hypothesis generating. So you say like, okay, well, look, we see this sort of correlation. So I have a hypothesis that there's a cause and effect relationship, but you have to then test that. And so the studies that you're referring to with the healthy user bias is where you have one person that does something that they think is better for their health. They're much more likely to do other things that they think are benefit for their health. So we've been told that fiber is very healthy and eating less meat is very healthy for decades now. And so people that are more likely to eschew meat and eat more fiber and fibrous plants and fruits and vegetables because they believe those there are health benefits from that. They're more likely to do other things that provide health, like exercise, like get outside, like um, uh, eat less junk food, not smoke, and not drink, things like that. So there's a lot of these different confounding factors. Also, the other thing is that these studies are fairly dishonest in and of themselves because they include food items that contain meat but are not exclusively meat. And so they say that that fast food, including the bun and the sugary sauce and all the vegetables and the fries, deep fried in trans fats and seed oils, and the sugary drink, that's meat. That counts as meat, even though that's the least ingredient in that entire equation is meat. They consider that meat. You're eating meat. If you eat less meat, if you eat like junk food, you're eating less meat. Okay, but you're also eating less junk food, aren't you? Pizza is considered meat because sometimes there's meat on toppings. So they don't say like, oh, was it a vegetarian pizza? Okay, with like soy cheese or something god awful like that. They don't ask that question. So it's like if you eat pizza, that's meat. And lasagna and sandwiches. What is it? What is the definition of a sandwich? It's something between two pieces of bread, right? That's the definition of a sandwich. And so obviously it's not just meat, but they consider all of that meat. And so then you have healthy user bias and you have dishonest representation of what meat is. And obviously you're going to get a very skewed answer. With fiber as well, people that are eating more fiber are people that are thinking, okay, I should eat more fiber. That's healthy for me. And they're going to do other things that are healthy for them as well. But what also are they doing? They're also eating less junk food, less processed food, because processed food notoriously doesn't have fiber in it because it doesn't freeze well. You have to freeze these things and then ship them all over the world, and fiber doesn't freeze very well. And so none of it has fiber, or very little of it has fiber. And so it's if you're eating, it basically what it's telling you is, are you eating more whole food versus junk food? They haven't ever done a study looking at someone who doesn't eat fiber because they're eating a lot of meat that doesn't contain fiber, but it's still a whole food approach, like the Inuit, the Maasai, me, and all the other carnivores around the world. We don't eat fiber because but we're eating a whole food diet, but it just doesn't contain fiber, and we're extremely healthy. We don't have any of these so-called problems that they attribute to meat. and or lack of fiber. And so you're comparing apples to oranges. You're saying that, oh, eating more fiber is always good no matter what. No, it's always compared to what. Any economist will always ask you, say, well, what's the difference between the, how good is this? Well, compared to what? What are you comparing it to? What are you comparing fiber to? Are you comparing it to processed food and garbage? Yeah, it's better. Okay. Comparing it to a whole food meat-based diet that doesn't contain fiber? No, it's not better. You don't need it. Fiber is indigestible. You can't break it down. We don't have the ability to. A bit of your gut bacteria can break some of it down, but it's a very small portion of that. You can't. We cannot. We don't make cellulase. No vertebrate animal makes cellulase. And so it's actually the microbes in herbivores' guts that actually break down and eat the cellulose. And as a byproduct, they produce saturated fat. And then those bacteria die off and they get absorbed as protein. So they're eating fiber, but what they're absorbing is fat and protein. So even when that gets to our gut and our bacteria eats some of it, very small amount of it, it can only account for a very small amount because we have a very short lower intestine and a very short cecum, which is just an appendix. Normally in animals, primates that eat fibrous plants, that's a big, long, 4-foot long cecum. And that's where fiber packs into and breaks down into fatty acids and protein. So we may get a little breakdown from the fiber, but what does it turn into? It turns into saturated fat, right? And so we're saying that saturated fat is good now. And it's like, oh, you need it because you need these short chain fatty acids and butyrate and things like that that help feed your enterocytes. Okay, well, why don't you just eat fat then? And you'll be in a state of ketosis and you'll make all these things yourself. Obviously, that's bad though, because fat's bad unless you're somehow getting it from fiber and then it's good. So it's a very mixed up logic, but that's the idea. There's a lot of confounding factors. There's a lot of things that go into it. You can't just say, yeah, fiber is good because there's this associative study that shows that. When you look at the randomized controlled trials, interventional trials, using fiber and introducing fiber and adding fiber tablets and taking them away, they largely find that they do absolutely nothing of benefit. There are some studies and people have come out, oh, look at this meta-analysis and this shows that fiber is great. Well, that's certainly the conclusion, that there's a net benefit when you eat fiber, but then you look at the studies that it includes and it certainly doesn't draw that it certainly doesn't deserve to draw that conclusion. Again, it's comparing processed food eating to unprocessed food eating or standard processed food garbage diet and add a fiber pill and then see, ooh, what's the difference? One of the things that fiber does is it blocks out the absorption of different nutrients, etc., that you may eat. And so if you're eating high octane garbage, then actually reducing the amount of that you absorb is actually probably a good idea. And it can be as much as 30%, according to Dr. Robert Lustig from UCSF, you can reduce the amount of absorption by 30%. So if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, you're eating a lot of sugar, you're eating a lot of garbage, and you're reducing the amount that you absorb by 30%, that's probably a net positive. There are actually a number of diabetes medications that actually work on that exact action. And so they stop you from absorbing, like acarbose. It prevents you from absorbing as many carbohydrates. You have less carbohydrates that go in your body and your blood sugar doesn't go up quite as high. Well, why don't you just eat less carbohydrates? And then you will have even less carbohydrates going into your body and your bloodstream. So that's what fiber does to you. And so some of these things say, oh, well, look, it actually helps improve blood pressure. Okay, well, let me look at the study. And you look at that study and they gave people a fiber tablet and they just ate whatever the hell they ate. And they looked at their blood pressure. And on average, it dropped by like 1.5 points of their systolic blood pressure, right? So if your blood pressure is 170 and you drop that down to 168.5, like that's literally negligible. It's insignificant. You're not in a danger zone and bring you out of a danger zone. It's just it's background noise. So, and again, how would it do that? You can't break it down. You can't absorb it. You can't gain any nutrition from it. So what is it doing? How is that mechanism? What is the mechanism by which they're lowering your blood pressure? Well, they're probably just reducing the amount of garbage that you're absorbing in your body, and that has some sort of knock-on effect down the road. Well, how about you just stop eating the garbage altogether and only eat what we're biologically adapted and designed for, and you won't have that problem at all. And this is what, thousands, if not millions of people around the world are doing now. And by going back to an ancestrally appropriate diet and proper human diet, and they're coming off their blood pressure medications, they're coming off their diabetes medications, they're coming off their autoimmune medications, they're coming off of all these different sorts of medications and treatments that they've never been able to figure out. We've only been able to treat symptomatically, and and yet now they're coming off, they don't need treatment whatsoever. So you cannot look at an associative study and draw any hard conclusions. Now, maybe that's enough for you to influence your life and your behavior, and that's totally fine. And if you find that you have benefits from that, go for it. And if you add fiber into your diet and you find that's a net benefit, lovely. I'm very happy for you. But if you try it and it doesn't do that, and it doesn't add joy and value to your life, well, then it doesn't really matter what a study says because it's not doing much for you.
Mhm. Now, to a lot of people, they can understand that processed food's bad for them. You know, you look at the back of the packet and you see emulsifier 472,
Mm.
and most people can come to the logical conclusion, maybe that's not good for me. But what for a lot of people, it's just so ingrained into their psyche that vegetables are good for you. You know, they cannot comprehend that broccoli is not good for their health. So if there's someone watching this and they're thinking, I refuse to believe this man that vegetables are bad for me, what would you say to that individual? If you're enjoying this interview and you want to see more carnivore related content like this, consider subscribing down below. The more subscribers we get, the more big interviews with special guests that we can do.
I mean, it's very understandable because again, we've just been inundated with the idea that we should eat a certain way and that that way is good and the other way is bad. But it's not based on hard evidence. It's not based on any good statistical analysis or experimental data. It's not even based on basic biology, physiology, and human evolution. It's just a supposition that was put forward. It didn't have evidence to back it up. So they lied and doctored that information to try to vilify meat. And so it defaulted into eating plants because obviously cholesterol was bad, therefore meat was bad. And I mean, I was a kid in the 80s. Like I remember this happening. Is as long as things didn't contain fat, saturated fat, and cholesterol, it was de facto good for you. It was just by definition good for you. The only thing that was bad was cholesterol and saturated fat. That's it. And so as long as it didn't have that, it was by definition good for you. So there were in the candy aisle, there were candies that said fat free, fat free. I was like, it's candy. I was 5 and I'm looking at this. I'm like, that doesn't mean that it's good for you. It's candy. I remember Entenmann's came out. There was like coffee cake that was fat free, and it was just covered in frosting and sugar and all this sort of garbage. And I remember my mom seeing that and like, oh my God, it's fat free cake. And she grabbed like 2 of them. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? It's like, that may be fat free, but there is no way that thing is good for you. But that was the argument. And so vegetables became de facto good for you because they didn't have fat and cholesterol. And fat and cholesterol were the only thing that were bad for you. And so we've just sort of kept pushing this idea. And then we had all these studies that come out again showing correlation, not causation, never causation, and healthy user bias. So you have these people say, oh, eat more fruits and vegetables, eat more fiber, eat more of this. And these are people that are working out. These are people that aren't smoking, that aren't drinking, that are taking care of themselves and doing all these other sorts of things. And yet, it's we have ended up getting fatter and sicker than we've ever been in human history. We've reduced um, red meat consumption. We've reduced fat and cholesterol by about 30%, 33% actually. Increased fruits and vegetables by 30 and 40% respectively. Over tripled the amount of unsaturated fats from vegetable oils, seed oils that we were consuming. Over tripled the amount of sugar in the form of high fructose corn syrup that we've been eating as well. And what happened? The obesity rate has gone up from around 8% up to 42%. Diabetes rates have gone up by a factor of 6 nearly. Heart disease rates have tripled. Cancer rates have tripled. Stroke rates have tripled. Autoimmune diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, even neurodevelopmental delays such as autism have all increased exponentially. These things were very, very rare before the 1970s and 80s, and now they're the vast majority of things that we treat. 90% of deaths in the Western world are from these so-called non-communicable chronic diseases. 74% of deaths around the world are from non-communicable chronic diseases. And that is a massive, massive difference from where we were even 50 years ago. I mean, oh, we're just living so much longer. No, we're not. The life expectancy is not any significantly higher than it was in the 1970s, 60s, 50s, 40s, even the 1920s. If you look at, if you separate out infant mortality rates, if you just look how old people lived when they died of old age, everyone lived very, very similar amount of time. The founding fathers of America, born in the mid 1700s, a lot of them lived to be in their 80s or 90s unless they were killed by something, by accident or in war or infection in the case of of George Washington. But he was out working in the fields, plowing and working when he was in his 60s, and it was just raining. He got soaked and drenched, and he ended up getting pneumonia from this, and he ended up dying from it several weeks later. So, he's in his 60s and still putting in a hard day's work, right? So, John Adams was 92, all these sorts of things. So these people were living well long enough to get these non-communicable chronic diseases. And the other thing is that, well, we're just getting better at diagnosing them. I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. You have someone with autoimmune issues, right? Who has like bloody diarrhea and 50, 30 times a day. You don't just miss that. Like, oh, we just figured out how to diagnose that now. We've known about that for forever, for hundreds of years anyway. And so, it's just an excuse. So these rates of diseases are not just going up in 50 years. They're going up decade by decade by decade. Just the amount that we're spending and on these things are estimated to over double by the time from 2010 to 2030. So we're spending tens of trillions of dollars treating these diseases, and that's doubling every in 20-year period. So, and the costs representative of this is getting worse as well, because the loss opportunity costs have increased over that time period as well, and the amount of money lost from the economy from early deaths has actually doubled in that time as well. So we're eating more vegetables, we're eating more fruits, we're eating more fiber, we're listing all these problems, we're eating less meat, and everything's getting worse. So, if you want to know about, why, plants are bad for you, study botany. It's an entire field and discipline of science. It's one of the original hard sciences, looking at botany. There are about 1 million different defense chemicals that plants use to protect themselves. We don't crop dust and spray all the forests and grasslands and things like that around the world because we don't have to, because those plants make their own defense chemicals. They make their own pesticides, their own insecticides. And that's why they're able to protect themselves and don't need us to do it for them. And so if you forget that, you're doing yourself a disservice, because there are toxins in there, and some are worse than others, which is why most plants on Earth are inedible. And so what does that mean? That means that they're so toxic that they'll make you extremely sick or even kill you if you eat even a small amount of them. And so you can't do it. You can't eat them. And that doesn't mean that the plants that we do eat are non-toxic, because we eat grapes and we eat avocados and we eat tomatoes, and we think that those are fine. In fact, we think they're very healthy, but they'll kill cats and dogs. So there are toxins in them. We know there are toxins in them because they are toxic to our pets. And yet we're denying that there are toxins at all. Okay, well, maybe we can contend with these toxins and they're okay. Well, yeah, we can contend with them more than we can other plants, but that doesn't mean that they're not causing harm. You say, well, but I eat vegetables all the time. Well, people smoke all the time. They drink all the time. They do drugs all the time. And they think that they're fine until their health starts to decay and get worse. So it's not about tonight or tomorrow. It's about over the years, over the decades, this builds up and causes harm. And some things cause harm faster than others. And I think that processed foods is definitely in that category. The sugars, the seed oils, processed garbage, that's going to speed things up. And so you're going to do relatively, respectively better, again, compared to what? You're going to do better eating a whole food diet, especially if it includes meat, a whole food omnivorous diet. You're going to do much better than if you were to eat a more processed food garbage diet. Absolutely. But is that the best that you can absolutely do? I would argue that no, it's not. And so if you want to know about plant toxins, just look them up. These things are out there. You study botany, study horticulture. Any textbook on botany can tell you exactly what I've just told you, and a lot more too. You can get into details. There's a Professor George Diggs, he's a professor of botany and biology in Texas, and he has the whole series of lectures online that are available on YouTube and elsewhere. The WHO has an entire web page talking about the different plant toxins that exist in the foods that we eat, or the toxins that exist in the food that we eat. So the naturally occurring toxins in food. And on there, they talk about plant toxins. They talk about toxins in mushrooms, and they talk about toxins in algae. Nowhere on there do they talk about toxins in meat, by the way, not even cholesterol. But they do talk about the toxins in plants, and about how these different categories of plants and the different health ramifications that they have on humans and livestock. And these are the foods that we eat. These are not the so-called inedible plants. And so it's very clear that these plants do contain toxins. That's just a hard fact. That's not up for debate. What's up for debate is how harmful they are, and that's certainly something that can be discussed. But the idea that there are no toxins in there is simply incorrect. And so you have to look at these things much more carefully. Now you can look at these things and again cherry pick. Now there's things in plants that are good for life because they're living things and they have things that are good for other living things. And that's why animals eat other living things because they can't create nutrition out of nowhere. They can't take, minerals and sunlight and turn that into life. Only plants and other sorts of forms of life can do that. Animals can't. And so animals are all heterotrophs. They have to eat something else. Something has to die for animals to live. That is just the fact. That is just the way of the world. And it would be nice if that weren't the case, but it is the case. And we just have to be realistic about this. And so you eat these things and they have things that are good for you, but they also have things that are bad for you because they have to protect themselves. So you get the bad with the good. And so you can cherry pick and say, oh, well, there's this little thing in broccoli and that makes it a superfood and it's so good for you and all that sort of stuff. No, because you get the bad with the good and they're ignoring that. They're omitting that. And that's a lie of omission. And so, that's a very important thing to remember. Now, meat is a superfood because fatty meat has every nutrient you need in the proportion that you need it. And that's very important too. And it has perfect bioavailability. That means you can get these nutrients into your body by eating them. You eat plants. One of the ways that plants defend themselves is by not being as nutritious because they lock up their nutrients in ways that we can't access. We don't have the enzymes to break down, so they're not bioavailable. So spinach has a lot of iron. It has a lot of calcium. And now they're arguing, oh, yes, you want to eat a lot of spinach because it has a lot of calcium in it. Okay, but they've actually done studies in humans where they've given them spinach to try to get their calcium levels up because we know from mass spectrometers that there is a lot of calcium in there. But then when they gave spinach to people, they found that their actual calcium levels went down because the calcium is bound up in ways that we cannot access. So it's not bioavailable. And they also come with anti-nutrients that make it, again, less nutritious and healthy for you to eat a plant or even anything else because they have phytic acid. They can bind to different minerals and nutrients. And so you can't absorb them. You can't use them. You have tannins that bind and denature proteins. So you can't break them down. You can't use them. You have oxalates. There's a lot of oxalates in spinach, and those will bind to minerals like calcium. They'll get into your blood and bind the calcium and strip it out of your body. They'll also bind iron. This is how people get rid of rust stains on their house or on their clothing, is by making oxalic acid and putting a bit of that in water and washing something in that, washing your clothes in there, or like spraying down the side and scrubbing the side of a building or something like that has like rust stains on it. And it just strips that rust right off because it binds the iron and strips it off. We're just doing that in your body as well. And so it can bind to the calcium and form calcium oxalate stones. This can deposit in different areas in your body, including your kidneys. Your body's trying to eliminate it out through your kidneys, and you form calcium oxalate stones, which are actually 75% of kidney stones are calcium oxalate stones. And when I was doing my emergency medicine rotation, actually worked in the emergency department for a year after intern year. And that's something that came up. People coming in with kidney stones, they have recurrent kidney stones. You need to talk to them about their diet and if they're eating a lot of spinach because they can get oxalate stones from eating spinach. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's something we know about. That's in medical textbooks, and yet we tell people eat so much spinach; it's so great for you, omitting the fact that it has these deleterious issues as well, and that the so-called health benefits may not actually even be bioavailable or absorbable at all. So it's a large subject. It's a large topic. I've done different talks on it. One was just very clear: plants are trying to kill you, and that was actually a medical lecture at a medical conference. Two other doctors, and so I was very concerned about how that would go down. But it was, people understood it, and I had professors of medicine coming up to me afterwards, going like, "I never want to eat a damn vegetable again," because these are the facts, and it's just not facts that get publicized all that often, but those are the facts.
Mhm. Now, you've been an advocate of this way of eating for a long time now, so I'm sure you've seen it all. What are the main benefits of a carnivore diet that you see happening over and over?
Well, it just optimizes health. And so people can have all sorts of different health issues, and many of them go away. Like I said, 90% of deaths in the Western countries come from these non-communicable chronic diseases. I don't think that those are diseases at all. They're just going up radically. That's not genetic, that's environmental. And so as we've been changing the way we're eating less biologically appropriate diet, these diseases are getting more profound. And so when I put people on a carnivore diet in my medical practice, or just people go on it, anyway on their own, we're seeing diseases reverse. We're seeing diabetes has been proven in clinical trials in humans to be able to be reversed with a high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diet. And so that was out of Verta Health in America with Professor Steve Phinney, and his group Verta Health has now helped over 25,000 people reverse their type 2 diabetes, which was heretofore thought was irreversible. It could not be treated. 100 years ago, the only treatment we had for diabetes type 1 or type 2 was a ketogenic diet, a high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diet. That was the only thing that kept people alive, even without insulin, even when with type 1 diabetics. It was the only thing that kept people alive. And then we came up with insulin, and they said, okay, but you really need carbs. Carbs are a really good idea. And so you ended up bringing carbs in with the insulin as well, whereas forgetting that the original treatment was no carbs. That's what helped people. Well, now we rediscovered this, and so diabetes goes away. Like I said, blood pressure issues can go away as well. A lot of people coming off their blood pressure medication. Autoimmune issues. If someone has an autoimmune issue, this is probably the best thing they'll ever do with their entire life. As far as I can tell, what an autoimmune disease is actually your body actually appropriately defending your body against these different sort of invasive toxins that are getting your body, like lectins. Lectins have a strong degree of association with autoimmunity, and your body attacks these things. The lectins can attack your body and get into your bloodstream through leaky gut. It also comes from plant toxins like gluten and other lectins that damage the gut lining. And now these other plant toxins can get in your body. Bacteria can get in your body, and they can cause damage in your body. And now your body's trying to attack these things, attack them with antibodies. And then some unlucky few are getting crossover reaction with your body. Or another idea by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who's an extremely accomplished neurosurgeon in Europe. She wrote the GAPS diet, and she actually reversed her child's autism by changing their diet. And she espouses a very heavily meat-based diet and actually get away from plants and plant toxins. So she actually argues fairly closely for a carnivore diet, or at least approaching that. And she talks about these toxins and lectins that actually get into the body, and they actually attack your thyroid, they attack your gut, they attack other parts of your body, and then your body makes antibodies towards that complex. And so you have these specific antibodies that are now damaging your thyroid or your intestine or other parts of your body, and or your nervous system in cases of like multiple sclerosis and those sorts of things. But the thought is that you have a sensitizing reaction, maybe to an infection, maybe to a virus, and then there's a cross reaction with your body, and then your body sensitizes those antibodies towards your body. But that never made sense to me. I took postgraduate immunology before I went to medical school, and it's very clear the immune cells actually have to go into your thymus and other parts of the body to mature as immune cells, and they are tested against all the different antigens in your body, all the different antigens that your body makes. And if they even have a weak association or attraction to them, they get killed immediately. And so you don't actually put out immune cells that will attack your body, right? And so that never made sense to me, and it doesn't fit the picture either, because when you take away plants and you just put people on a pure meat diet, especially pure red meat and water diet, when the animal's eating what it's supposed to eat, it's going to be healthier as well. It's going to be able to filter out these plant toxins so they don't get into the meat, and they're not going to get into you. And so people with autoimmune issues, that's very important. And so when you're eating like that, you're eating beef, lamb, water, especially the ruminant animals, because they ferment and break down these plant toxins, even out of plants that they're not typically designed to eat. And they break those down and lower the toxic load before they absorb them. And so less of that stuff is going to get in the body, even if they're eating plants that they're not normally going to eat. And so when they just eat that and they cut out all plants, we can actually test for antibodies for a lot of these things. You can't test for all antibodies, but a lot of these things, like say Hashimoto's, you can test for those antibodies. And I have over 100 patients with Hashimoto's. And when they are able to stay on a pure red meat and water diet and stay strict with it, you just see their antibodies just come right down, and eventually they'll get down to zero. It takes a long time for Hashimoto's. It can take over a year, depending on how high the antibodies are, but it happens, and you can keep seeing it. It's coming down and down and down, and their thyroid function is going up and up and up because they're not damaging their body to near the same extent. So it just optimizes your health. It optimizes your energy. You have less brain fog. You have less mental fatigue. Your brain's running on ketones now, which is its primary energy source. People say that no, you have to have glucose for your brain. Well, there are some cells in your brain that do require glucose, but good news, you make glucose when you're in a state of ketosis, and it's perfect. It's always leveled. You're not these ups and downs and these swings and jumps, right? It's just here all the time. You will always have just a perfect blood sugar level all the time, but you'll also have ketones. And 2/3 of your brain actually prefer ketones. Why do I say that? Because when you have enough ketones and you have an abundance of glucose, those parts of your brain, 2/3 of your brain, including the cortex, will only run on the ketones, right? So that's the preference. It prefers ketones. It's only when those ketones start going down and aren't sufficient that you start filling in the gaps with glucose. And so when you are eating a lot of carbohydrates, you raise insulin, you suppress your ketone production. You go out of ketosis. And well, now you don't have ketones available, so your brain needs to go on its secondary food supply, which is glucose. And so that's what we've come to think of it as our brain's primary energy source, because they say, well, when you eat, it looks like this, and when you don't eat, it looks like that. Neglecting to realize that when you eat anything except carbohydrates, it also looks like you're fasting and not eating anything. So they think that, well, because when you eat, we call this a fasting metabolism, your brain runs on glucose, therefore glucose is the main driver there, the main nutrient source. But that's not the case, because it actually prefers ketones. And our normal metabolic state is ketosis. And that metabolic state, natural metabolic state of most animals on Earth is ketosis, because 70% of animals are carnivores, and they just eat protein and fat, and they're in ketosis. But then again, herbivores, they break down fiber into protein and fat. And so they're in ketosis as well. And so, why would that, automatically be a problem stress state when most animal life on Earth is in that metabolic state as well? So you improve in all these different ways. People will lose weight, they'll lose fat, they'll gain muscle, they gain health, they come off medications. Their gums and teeth get better. You change what you eat. You're going to change the bacteria in their mouth. You're going to change your oral biome. You're going to change your microbiome, and that all improves as well. So people don't have cavities as much. They don't have tooth decay. They don't have bad dentition and gingivitis that ends up reversing very quickly. I mean, what animal in the wild gets tooth rot and tooth decay? You lose your teeth in the wild, you're dead, because you can't eat. You can't defend yourself. You can't fight. You can't hunt, but you also can't eat, right? And so it's very important to keep your teeth. And even without toothbrushes and dentists, you should be able to keep your teeth your whole life, because as soon as you lose your teeth, you're not going to live much longer, right? So there honestly, there are more benefits than you can sort of list in one time. But it just, in the short of it, it just optimizes health, and it gets people healthy. It gets them off medication. It gets them down to a normal body fat percentage of body composition. Helps them put on muscle, healthy, lean body mass, and lose excess body fat. And maybe if they're too skinny, it actually helps them put on a bit of healthy body fat, because you need some body fat. It's very important for you. And certainly put on lean body mass as well. Helps with brain fog, helps with cognition, helps with another experimental study and another interventional trial that they had with the high-fat meat-based ketogenic diet was in Alzheimer's. So they had people with Alzheimer's that were put on this sort of diet, a high-fat meat-based ketogenic diet, like a carnivore diet, and they found that that was a better treatment for Alzheimer's than every medication ever trialed for Alzheimer's, right? So schizophrenia, multiple mental health issues, major depression, anxiety, OCD, bipolar, even ADHD, even autism have been found in clinical trials to improve on a high-fat meat-based ketogenic diet. And this is being used by professors of psychiatry at Harvard, such as Professor Chris Palmer and former professor at Harvard, Dr. Georgia Ede, who have both written books on the subject. Chris Palmer's is Brain Energy, and Dr. Eads is Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. And they both talk about the importance of a high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diet. And Dr. Ead actually has a whole chapter on the carnivore diet and how actually this is the best for mental health as well. So the list goes on and on and on, but basically it just optimizes your health. And so, it's well worth trying. It's not going to hurt you. There's nothing harmful about it. There's nothing harmful about what we've been eating since time immemorial. There's nothing harmful about what 70% of animals on Earth are eating without any problem. And even herbivores opportunistically eat smaller animals when they have the opportunity to, when they can. And so there's nothing harmful in meat. The main argument was cholesterol, and that's been thoroughly debunked countless times. So it's not going to harm you. It can potentially help you. And so if someone is struggling with some sort of health issues or on medications or having weight issues or want to put on muscle or whatever, you try eating this way, do it for 30 days, see how you feel, because that's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter what a study says. What studies are there for is to help guide your behavior, to help guide medical practice. So what am I going to recommend to my patient? What did the evidence say? Well, I think the evidence is very clear that we should just be eating meat and not eating plants. And so I recommend that. And when I recommend that to my patients, I see their health improve dramatically. Their blood markers and biomarkers improve dramatically. Their physical markers improve dramatically. They come off medications. They improve their health in all sorts of other ways as well. So I see that. But and I think the evidence is quite convincing, but, the only thing that matters is what happens with you. It doesn't matter what a study says. It doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. What matters is what happens when you do it. And so if you try it for 30 days and you improve your health, great. And if you don't like it and you want to do something else, fine, but it's well worth the effort. And it can improve your health and your life in ways that you actually had no idea you could. I have so many people telling me that their health improves in ways they didn't even know that there was a problem until it went away. And some people say, well, I'm not actually sick. I don't actually have health problems. So, I guess I don't need to do it. The response to that is like, well, actually, most people don't even realize how unwell they actually feel until they get away from it and they start feeling amazing. And they like, I had no idea that I could feel this good. I thought I felt great. I thought I was fine. And then I stopped eating plants and I felt like a superhero. And I looked at and I was upset after 2 weeks. I was extremely upset. And I looked back at my life and realized that compared to how I felt now and how I should have felt my whole life, I felt like garbage. And I was furious because I knew that I was robbed of my birthright. I should have felt this amazing every day of my life, and more so because I was younger then, right? So this is something that can help in thousands of different ways and will help different people in different ways as well. But it just optimizes health. That's all it comes down to. And so if you want optimal health, whether you have, any known health issues or not, if you want to optimize your health, be as healthy as you can, be as good of an athlete, good as a student, good of a scholar, especially for kids, it's most important because they're going to develop to their genetic potential. You only get one chance to develop and that's it. You're not going to be as tall, or smart, or as healthy as you would have been if you ate a more proper diet. When we look at skeletal remains pre and post agriculture, it's a marked decline in the height and health of human beings after they adopted plant-based agriculture. The brain shrunk by 11% for men, by 17% for women, and that wasn't hundreds of years or thousands of years. That was immediately after the introduction of agriculture. At every point around the world, at every time and every place around the world that switched to agriculture, regardless of the type of crop, the same things happened. The height, health, and brain size of people declined. And it's not like around the world it happened. It was just in those isolated areas. And we saw this in real time with the Native Americans, the Native Australians in the last 150 years, getting more westernized and putting on a more Western diet and away from their hunter-gatherer sort of pasts, and started eating more plant-based crop agriculture and now processed food. Same exact same thing happened. They shrank and they had more chronic diseases. And now they actually have far higher rates of chronic disease than Westerners and other people that have had agriculture longer, because they've only been exposed to agriculture and these plant toxins in the last 150 years. And so they're actually hit much harder by this, and it's affecting them much more negatively. And we can see this happening in real time to real people. And it's actually quite tragic.
Wow. Yeah. Sounds like basically everything is resolved by a carnivore diet. For
Quite a lot. Yeah.
mm, for most people, they remove the plants and everything goes as they hoped. That they feel great, they're looking better, their mental health improves. But there are a small subset of the population that they go on the carnivore diet and they don't quite have the desired results they're after. Maybe the weight's not coming quite down. They don't have incredible amounts of energy. What do you think these people can do to resolve those issues they're having?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a workaround. You're right. Most people do gain a lot of benefits right away, and others, it takes a bit longer, and it can be very frustrating because they look at other people and say, "Wow, this guy's losing so much weight, and they're getting so much healthier in all these other sorts of ways, and it's just not getting there for me yet. I don't feel that I'm quite there yet." And some people say, "Well, maybe it just didn't work for me." Um, you always have to it is always individual. It's very individual. So you always have to ask, okay, what exactly are you eating? Sometimes they're still including stevia or monk fruit sugar or erythritol, those sorts of things, or having different sorts of things that aren't quite fully there. There, a lot of people think of a carnivore diet as, okay, I'll just eat more meat and slightly less plants, and it's just getting rid of everything. It's like no plants, no mushrooms, no sugar or any sweeteners, and nothing artificial. You're just eating whole meat and a lot of fat, and just drinking water. And if you do that, people definitely have the best outcomes and results. And then sometimes there is an adaptation phase. Some people will adapt a bit faster. Like I felt very good very quickly and had a lot better energy within a couple of weeks and felt amazing, even in my late 30s and 40s. But some people, it takes a bit longer than that. And it can take actually months to get fully keto adapted and get your energy levels back up. Another thing is that people can fixate on one issue, and that's their main issue for trying a carnivore diet. And they're looking at that, and that one's not quite going as fast and budging. Maybe it's not budging at all as as they would have liked, and that other people have. And the problem with that is that they don't actually see all the other benefits they're getting. They sort of lose sight of that. And I've seen this actually a number of times. Where like, for instance, there's one lady was really hoping to lose weight with a carnivore diet. And she said, just it didn't really work for her. It was unfortunate because she actually really liked it. She really liked the carnivore diet, made her feel really good. She had good energy and felt better and much, got rid of her brain fog. And, she came off her medications for her autoimmune diseases and put that into remission. And so everything was really great, but she just didn't lose weight. So I guess it just didn't work for me. And, which is unfortunate because she was having such good results with a carnivore diet and these other ways that she just, it was a shame to have to come off it and go back to eating the way she was before. And then all of her autoimmune issues came back and so on. To me, it sounded like it was actually working really well, and that she was just fixating on the weight side of things and losing sight of all the better things, of all the other benefits. And that's the classic, missing the forest for the trees. And so she was actually improving greatly. And that's why I tell people it's about health first and foremost. How do you feel? What is your health doing? How is your medications going? Is your autoimmune issue going to remission, or at least reducing its severity? These sorts of things. If that's happening, that's the main thing. And your weight will happen, but a lot of people have different sort of, we all start at a different place. And so we all have different metabolic demands. We all have different metabolic status that we're in. So people have been starving themselves and eating a whole bunch of different foods that aren't very good for them. They can actually tank their metabolism, and it can take a while. It can take months and months and months for their metabolism to heal and speed up and start working properly again, and for their hormones to normalize. And you get leptin imbalance, leptin resistance. It's very difficult to lose weight when you have leptin resistance and insulin resistance. So people can do it, but it can just take longer, especially if it's very elevated. And that can be a sign that your metabolism is severely depressed. And so that's just going to take longer for some people. And some people actually gain weight. And so if they were fixated on that, they could just be like, okay, well, I'm not doing this anymore. And losing sight of the fact that they're getting all these other benefits from it. And you have to work through this. People spend decades putting themselves into a position of ill health and often obesity. But you don't have to be obese to be sick. I have plenty of patients who are skinny and extremely metabolically sick. And so you take decades to get you into that position. And we think that it should just all resolve in a couple of weeks is probably not realistic. And so we can get blinded by that as well. And so it's good to remember that this is going to take time, and we took decades to get in. It's not going to take decades to get out, but it is going to take longer than a few weeks or even a few months, and possibly even a few years before you get your full resolution up to what you can. What I like to tell people is that, there's no shortcuts. You walk 10 miles into the woods, you have to walk 10 miles out. That's all there is to it. And so just, keep that in mind. Focus on the positives. Look at the different things that are helping you, your energy levels, your skin, your autoimmune issues, all these other sorts of things. Look at those. Remember, it's health first, body composition distant second, weight never, because you can put on muscle and you can lose fat and you can stay the exact same weight. And so that has to do with composition. The weight on the scale doesn't tell you anything about body composition, and your body composition doesn't necessarily tell you anything about your health. It's your health that's the most important thing. Body composition will happen. And even if you don't get down to your perfect body composition, you're at least going to be as healthy as you possibly can be for the point that you're at. You know, if you start this at a later point in life, you know, you may not be able to be as healthy as if you started this earlier in your life and just did this perpetually. But you can still optimize your health for where you are and be the best in the best health and the best body composition that you can be for where you are now. But it takes time, and just be patient. Talk to people who've gone through it, get some advice, make sure you're doing it pretty strict. If you're eating anything else besides fatty meat and water, stop it. Make sure you're eating enough. Make sure you're eating enough fat. You eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. You make sure you get enough water. Sometimes people feel a bit gross. Sometimes their electrolytes can be a bit off. You need to recognize that, and you need to correct that if you need to. I don't use salt anymore at all. I get all my electrolytes from my food. But early on, people can lose more electrolytes than they normally would, because when insulin is adjusting, you can end up losing more electrolytes than you would want to, and so you actually have to add in more electrolytes as a result of that, even more than taste good. You know, you just have to get more electrolytes in you. So there's always a workaround. I mean, I work with people all the time on this, and any little issues that come up, there's almost always a workaround. I really haven't met anybody that we haven't been able to figure out how to optimize their health and fix their issues. And sometimes, you know, the solution is you just have to give it more time, because it's your body is adjusting and adapting, and you just have to let it do its thing.
Hmm. I think another thing that really holds people back, and I'd love to know your thoughts on it, is dairy. A lot of people, they'll go on carnivore and they'll hear that dairy is, I mean, in most people's definition, dairy falls in the terminology of carnivore. And so they'll
Mm.
hear this and they think they have free reign on dairy.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
tends to have some pretty unfavorable outcomes, to put it
yeah.
nicely, for some people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it is definitely technically carnivore. You know,
Mm,
it's coming, from an animal. But that's not to say that things like honey are carnivore because they come from a bee, because it's not really from a bee. It's not made from a bee. It's the concentrated nectar that they swallow and then regurgitate up. So actually vomit it back up, and they sort of have it in this stored, concentrated form that they can then eat later. And bees are a very different form of life. Insects are very different than mammals are. But dairy is a bit of a gray area, because some people do fine on dairy and other people have a bad reaction to it. It can be quite pro-inflammatory. The casein proteins can be quite inflammatory. This is where they have A1 and A2 milk. A2 milk and A2 dairy is less inflammatory because it has A2 casein, but it's still inflammatory. It's just not as inflammatory as A1. And so again, is it compared to what? Compared to A1, yes, A2 is better. Compared to no casein at all, no, it's not good. And so we're not as good. And so it's it's one of those things that I think people have to be very careful with. Like I don't really use dairy. I mean, if I were, I would use it as a condiment. I would use it very rarely. I would use it as a condiment with meat, where I would melt some cheese onto meat, like a burger patty or something like that. I don't just you know maybe have a glass of raw milk every now and then when it's available, and with a meal or something like that. But I wouldn't just sit there just drinking a bunch of milk, and I wouldn't just eat a bunch of blocks of cheese, and I wouldn't eat just bowls of yogurt or anything like that. If you're going to use dairy, use it infrequently, and you use it as a condiment. And most people actually do a lot better without it. It can also cause a bit of compulsive eating, cause people to eat more than they would necessarily want. If you're just eating what you're designed to eat, if you're just eating meat, then your body will tell you when to stop. It just stops tasting good. And but you can keep eating dairy for some reason. You just keep drinking milk, certainly, because that has carbohydrates that will raise your insulin, that will block your leptin, that will cause you to overeat. And so not very good. But there are other molecules in dairy, including cheese and things like that, that can cause a bit of compulsive eating and just saying, I want more, I want more, I want more. And so I think it's a good idea to really stay away from dairy. And I totally agree with you. When you tell people, it's like, yeah, you can have dairy, but, and I give that whole spiel, all they hear is like, oh, I'm gonna have dairy. And they're just eating just chunks of cheese and bowls of dairy and yogurt and just dumping down gallons of milk and things like that. And they're like, oh my God, I'm putting on weight. This is bullshit. And it's just like, okay, well, what are you eating? And it's a lot of dairy. typically. And so that's a classic weight loss stall, and something and a classic weight gain, um, which is what dairy is supposed to do. It's supposed to make young animals and young mammals eat enough to put on weight because they need to grow. They need to grow quickly so that they can be safe and strong and an adult to protect themselves and defend themselves, because they're very vulnerable when you're a small animal. So it's definitely not ideal. It is carnivore, it is definitely part of that, but it's not ideal. It has a lot of good nutrients, has some things that you don't want, but it's not a complete nutrition. Like, you can't just live on cheese. You can live on steak. And so it's not something that you should just eat on its own, and you shouldn't eat much of it. So if you wanted to use it as a condiment, that if that helped you, especially people that have difficulty, like just can't get their head around just eating meat and that's it, then adding a bit of dairy and having that sort of thing as the adjunct, or using these different recipes that involve cream and cheeses and things like that, to make chaffles and those sorts of things that helps you get along with it. That's fine, but just do understand this can cause inflammation. Anyone with autoimmune issues really should not eat any dairy. Should really just stick to just red meat and water. And if you react negatively to dairy, you should definitely not have any dairy. And everyone else, use it very sparingly, very infrequently, and only as a condiment, because it will make you gain weight, and it will make you stop losing weight, and it can make you put on fat and not feel as good as you could. And so obviously that's not what we're going for.
Hmm. Now, the other thing that people really like to try and skirt into the perimeters of carnivore is fruit. Now, I don't
Mhm.
know how they've managed to convince themselves that,
Yeah.
but there is some notable doctors online who are advocates of fruit and they
Mhm.
consume large quantities of it. What is your main concerns with fruit?
Well, I did a whole video just it's called "Fruit and Honey Are Not Carnivore," and that sort of addresses those things. But a obviously, a fruit plant is not carnivore, right? So if you're just going off that, but you don't have to be pedantic. Oh, no, no, it's technically not. No, let's look at why. The argument for eating fruit, especially sweet fruits, um, is that is is if you need carbohydrates, and if you need carbohydrates, then where are you going to get your carbohydrates from? Because plants and grains and seeds and these sorts of things, potatoes, they have carbohydrates, yes, but they also have a lot of toxic elements that you really don't want. So the argument was that if you do want carbohydrates, and the argument was is that you did, even though you actually make all the carbohydrates you need, you have a perfect level of blood sugar at all times when you're in a state of ketosis. That if you felt that you did need carbohydrates, then that would be a better source of carbohydrates than others, and that's probably true. But sugar is sugar, you know. And so sugar is going to do the same things in your body, especially fructose. Fructose acts differently in your body. So the different sorts of carbohydrate molecules, the different sugar molecules act differently in your body. They have different, I mean, they're different chemicals. They're different chemical compounds. They have different chemical reactions in your body, and they have different hormonal reactions and responses in your body as well. They'll all raise up insulin, um, and blood sugar eventually. But things like fructose specifically will also raise insulin, but will also block leptin independently, and will upregulate ghrelin, which is our hunger signal as well, which can cause you to overeat. And leptin is our satiety hormone. So you're blocking your satiety hormone, and you're increasing your hunger hormone. And what is that going to do? It's going to make you more hungry. You're going to want to eat more. And so, and it does other things in your body too that you don't want also, and that people can look into. I've done a lot of videos on sugar and fructose as well. But I'm looking up Dr. Robert Lustig. He's done a lot of work on sugar and fructose. So you're bringing these things into your body, and so this can cause harm. Fructose, it has been shown by the University of California, San Francisco biochemistry department, in 2009, that actually fructose goes into your liver and gets broken down into the same byproducts as alcohol. So you get the same breakdown products as alcohol, and you get the same damage to your body and your liver from those breakdown products that you do alcohol. So you get fatty liver disease, you get cirrhosis, you get diabetes, you get heart disease. It's even implicated in things like cancer and Alzheimer's. So this is a bad substance. It also gives a large dopamine hit to the addiction centers of your brain, just like cocaine, heroin, and meth. And there are actually MRI studies showing that people who are addicted to sugar kill the same areas of their brain as people who are addicted to methamphetamines. So it kills the same areas of your brain as meth, to the same extent as meth. and it damages your body in a similar way to alcohol. So this is a drug. This is a nasty, nasty drug. It's just we don't know it yet. We realize and recognize it as such yet. And so this is illegal to put in all these foods and sugar stills and kids' foods and candies. You're trying to get kids addicted to sugar so that they keep eating this product. And oh, that sounds horrible. No one would do that. Well, they would actually, because the Procter and Gamble and the other tobacco companies, when they got called out for being, doing unscrupulous sort of practices and lying about how bad their product was and how addictive it was, um, and the cigarette sales started coming down after they got called out for this by the U.S. Congress. They actually started buying up some of the major food companies. So it actually became one of the largest processed food manufacturers in the world, the tobacco industry. And they actually moved all their tobacco scientists into the food sciences to try to make those as addictive as possible. But now they could actually legally target kids for marketing, and they could market towards them and market these sugar cereals and these big colorful boxes and just get their bright eyes and, oh my God, I need that. And it becomes very addictive. And so, like any good drug dealer, you hook your victims early and young, so that you have a customer for life. And that's the whole idea. And that's what they're doing now with sugar. And so fruit has sugar, and it does have toxins. The idea is that fruit is the only part of the plant that the plant wants you to eat. Well, the plant, that's true in a sense, but it's not the whole story. So the plant wants something to eat that fruit, but it doesn't necessarily want you to eat it. And so the vast majority of fruit on Earth will still kill you. They'll still kill humans. They'll still kill basically all animals because they've co-evolved with other animals to try to eat that fruit and then move that seed, mostly with birds. So things like cassowary bird is a tropical bird. Oh, any tropical fruit is good. No, if you get lost in the woods and you start looking at little bulbs and berries that you don't recognize, you don't eat them, because more often than not, they'll kill you. And that's because they have to go through the digestive tract of certain animals, like birds, specific birds, in order to germinate and turn into a plant. So cassowary bird is a bird in the tropics. They eat frugivores. They eat fruit. So you eat about 150 varieties of fruit. Every single one of those fruit will kill you. Every single one of those fruits will kill every single animal on Earth except a cassowary bird, because if they don't go through the gut of a cassowary bird, they won't turn into a plant. And so it's very important to that plant to only be eaten by cassowary birds. They have to be very attractive to a cassowary bird, very beneficial, and very detrimental to anything else trying to eat them. And because if a cassowary bird leaves an area, then they actually will die. Those plants will die out. And so it's very, very important. So we need to remember that. And again, we talk about different sorts of fruits like grapes and avocados. So, well, okay, we'll eat those. Those are good. The plant wants you to eat them. Okay, but they kill cats and dogs. Tomatoes, they're berries, they're fruits. They'll kill cats and dogs. They're nightshades. We know this as a dangerous family of plant, the nightshade family. And so, typically we didn't eat them. Then we started eating some of these things, but we took off the skin, we vine ripened, then we took the seeds out, and and then we boiled the hell out of what was left, and that lowered the toxic load. And that's how we were able to eat these things more safely. But now we're saying, like, eat it raw, eat it this, eat it that, eat the skin, get the seeds. That's where all the nutrients are. Well, again, this is cherry picking. You're getting the good, you're getting the bad with the good, and you're ignoring the bad for the good. And so that's really not what you want to do. And so these fruits do have toxins. They don't have, especially the sweet fruits, they don't have nearly as many toxins. But even all citrus have coumarins, which are light sensitive molecules. They combine with UV light. When UV light hits them, they will irreversibly bind to proteins and DNA in your body and in your cells and cause permanent damage. It cause you to blister and get chemical burns. Like if you got lime juice down your arms because you're squeezing limes in the sun, you could actually get chemical burns. There's actually people have gotten second-degree burns from this. It's something called phytophotodermatitis, right? So light-sensitive dermatitis from plant toxins, right? This is actually a well-known feature in dermatology. And that's a condition that people treat in dermatology. It's not all that common, but it does happen. It is in the literature. People can look this up. There are news reports about it, and it's certainly in dermatology textbooks. So there are toxins in there. There can be less in the sweet fruits, because we think of fructose as the sweetest of the carbohydrates, because we think that, evolutionarily speaking, that that our ancestors that recognized that as safe were the ones that survived. So fructose doesn't come along in fruits or plants that are extremely toxic to humans that will kill us that day. And so if we recognize that as safe and say, okay, well, I can eat this and this is safe and I can survive on this, and this will get me to my next kill and this will get me through a famine or something like that. That's a survival advantage. And so that's why we think that fructose is it's much sweeter than the other carbohydrates. And so you need a lot less of it to get that sweet sensation. But then we adulterate these fruits as well and make them way more sweet than they ever were in nature. And the fructose itself again can cause harm. So it'll give you a quick hit of energy, a quick boost, but too much of it, you can overwhelm your body's ability to detoxify it, and it can end up causing harm. So that's why I don't eat any fruit, and I just sort of advise people about that. And also, I want to be in ketosis. I don't want to avoid ketosis. The argument for being for eating sweet fruits is because if you want some carbohydrates to keep yourself out of ketosis, well, what are the least offensive carbohydrates? Okay, I don't want to be out of ketosis. I want to be in ketosis. That's our main biochemical state and metabolism. That's where all of our heavy machinery comes to bear biochemically. That's where everything starts working in a more cohesive manner. We have much more energy. We can tap into our fat stores. We can run on our fat energy all the time. Even a 65-kilo person who has 6% body fat, so a very lean person, has 150,000 kilocalories of energy stored in their fat tissue, their meager fat tissue, and they can tap into that. So you can go weeks without running out of energy and even breaking down your muscle tissue if you're in ketosis, right? And so that's a massive advantage. So I'm not just eating carbs all the time. And I desperately have to eat carbs and eat more carbs and I have low energy and I eat more carbs. And so I can pick my energy up. And you're doing that whole game where you're eating carbs to jump up your blood sugar level, but then it crashes down. You have to eat more and it crashes down. You eat more and it crashes. I'm just here all day, every day. And I like being here. I like just having perfect energy all day, every day. And so I get up in the morning, I go and do my thing, I work, I see patients. I don't stop for lunch. I don't need to. I don't need breaks. I just work throughout the day. I see as many people as I can. If I have time, I go to the gym. I go home and I do interviews and online consultations, try to help people generally till about midnight. And then I am answering emails and messages until like 1 or 2 a.m. And then I go to sleep and I wake up and I do it again. And you know what? My energy is here the whole time. And when I'm on call overnight and I'm operating or doing, seeing patients or just getting harassed on the phone because it's just feral sometimes on when you're on call for neurosurgery. I have perfect energy. It's here. Like, yes, I want to sleep, but if I can't sleep, I have the energy, I have the mental acuity and sharpness that I need to perform, potentially life-saving surgery on people in the middle of the night with 1 hour of sleep, right? So I don't want to be eating carbs. I don't want to have those ups and downs. I want to be in ketosis. And so the main argument for eating fruit is to get carbohydrates and to get out of ketosis, but I don't want to be out of ketosis. So to me, it's just it's a moot point in any case. So I don't even consider it in the first place.
Hmm. Now, do you think it's important that people eat ruminant meat on a carnivore diet? Because, I mean, there are some people that, they live in areas of the world where they have their only choice is to eat monogastric animals such as pork, such as chicken.
Mhm.
How much of a difference do you think it makes? And depending on what obviously what the animal eats itself.
Well, if an animal is eating what it's supposed to eat, it's going to be a lot more healthy. I mean, that's the food chain. And the food chain starts in the soil, and the soil quality is good, and the plants are going to have more nutrients. The animals eating those plants are going to be more nutritious, and the animals eating those animals are going to be more nutritious, and so on. So you want to try to do that. You want to try to eat animals that are eating their natural diet and in a healthy environment, and that's obviously better for the animal. It's also better for us. And so if raising animals for our consumption, it sort of behooves us to take good care of them as well and make sure that they have happy, healthy lives as well. And that actually is better for us too. It's in our advantage to do that. If you're a farmer, you're going to make more money because your animals are going to be healthier and have a better weight to them. And as a consumer, you're going to be healthier as well because you're going to get a better nutrient profile. Now, the most important thing is just eating meat. You need meat, you need fatty meat because these are the essential nutrients that we need for our life and our health. And you want to avoid plants because plants have things that are harmful to our health and they don't have nearly the composition of nutrients that we actually need for optimal health. You can survive on plant food, at least for a time. You can't survive without meat, without supplements, though. And so, in the modern era, we're a bit spoiled. This is sort of sort of want to tell people to check their privilege, because most people cannot survive or thrive on a plant-based diet because they need copious amounts of help with supplements, etc. You look at India, the entire subcontinent of India, 1.4 billion people. On average, they eat only 3 kilos of meat a year per person, and they have some of the highest rates of chronic disease on earth. They have some of the highest rates of diabetes on earth. So in America, all the big fat lazy slobs that we are in America, we have a 9% diabetes rate, which is massive. That's increased by 5.8 fold since the 1980s, right? It's just massive, and it's just gotten worse, right? In India, it's 25%, and that's people in rural and urban areas, right? So you have nearly triple the diabetes rates in this plant-based vegetarian society, right? So the malnutrition rates and the vitamin deficiencies that are in India are absolutely rampant. And so this is not actually healthy. So the quality of meat does matter, but what's most important is just getting meat and not eating plants. And so whatever meat that you have available to you, or eggs are fine. Eggs are all the core nutrients that you need to make an animal. So obviously that's really what we want. We want nutrients to make an animal, us. And so eggs are great. Some people respond negatively to eggs, especially corn and soy fed eggs, and people with autoimmune issues probably should avoid them as well, especially the egg whites. But people do generally pretty well on them as well. So they're very good nutrients. And oh goodness, get out. Sorry, it was a bee. And so it's really the most important thing is just eat the meat that you like, that you enjoy, that you have access to, and that you can afford. That's really the most important thing. Then you can sort of get into things like, well, I feel best on beef, I feel best on lamb. Well, what about grass-fed and finished? Yes, they're objectively better. They objectively have more nutrient profile. Does that make a huge difference? Some people it would. Some people it's not as much. Some people can have perfectly, optimal nutrition, vitamin, mineral status with just grain-fed and finished beef, and others will do much better with grass-fed and finished, especially people with autoimmune issues. And so, I do think that red meat's better, because especially when animals are being fed outside of their traditional diet, it's the ruminant animals that have that ability to ferment and break down those plants and those plant toxins before absorbing them, that are going to have less toxic load and more nutrition and more nutrients available to them. For us, and then the monogastrics, the pigs, chicken, and fish, if they're fed a bunch of corn, wheat, and soy that they're not designed to eat either, they don't ferment it first. They actually just, like us, it goes in their stomach, it starts getting broken down, then you just start absorbing things. And so now their body has to contend with those toxins. They're not going to be as healthy and or as happy, and they are not going to be as healthy either. So they're going to have a lower nutrition profile, and they're going to have a worse nutrition profile. And they can have a much higher levels of linoleic acid, for example, which are the omega-6s from plants that you really don't want. You don't want the plant versions of anything, really. You have omega-6s, or they have linoleic acid instead of arachidonic acid. The omega-3s, they have alpha linoleic acid instead of DHA and EPA. Those are the ones you need. And ALA doesn't really convert into DHA or EPA. And some studies actually show that your DHA levels go down when you eat more ALA. And they have vitamin D2 instead of D3, which is what we need. They have K1 instead of K2. They have beta carotene instead of retinol, which is vitamin A. And so on and so on. They all the different fats are the polyunsaturated fats, and the wrong ones that you don't necessarily want. They have plant sterols instead of cholesterol. It just goes on and on. Like, they're not. There's a different form of life, and it's not something that we're adapted to eating. So it is better to eat the ruminant meat that can ferment and break these things down and release more bioavailability and get more nutrients in with them. But if you can't afford that, you don't have access to that, you just eat whatever meat's available to you. That's always going to be better than the alternative. Any meat is better than every plant. because all meat is beneficial to you and every plant can cause harm. So, there are gradations within that. And if you get to a point in where you're living and how the access that you have and what you can afford, and you're just eating top shelf fatty grass-fed and finished beef with grass-fed tallow and butter, great, you're going to do better for it. My patients that I track, when you put them on a carnivore diet eating just whatever meat, their nutrients improve, their hormones improve, everything's improving. But they may get to a point with these nutrients where they're up here at much better levels, and they're just like, just in those optimal levels. But people that are grass finished, they're way up there in those optimal levels without eating liver. But that's another thing too. If it's slightly less nutrient density in your grain finished beef, get liver. Liver's cheap. Liver's one of the cheapest things out there. You add that in. You don't need a ton of it, just a little bit to bump up your nutrition profile. And so there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, but no, I don't think that you should just be, ooh, that meat's bad, I'm not going to eat that meat. If you have a choice and you have, grass-fed and finished fatty beef, yeah, pick that. But if you don't, just just any meat that you like, that you enjoy, that makes you feel best, and that you can afford. That's the important thing. And just, I think it's the most important what not to eat as opposed to what to eat. You want to eat the meat because that's where you get your nutrition from. That's where you get your health from. But you want to stop, not eat certain things because they cause harm. So no plants or mushrooms, no sugar or any artificial or any sweeteners, nothing artificial. And that goes for sauces, seasonings, and drinks as well. And that's if you want to be optimal. That's the best of the best of the best. But people can take bits and pieces of that. But as long as you're moving towards that, you're eating a lot more fatty meat and a lot less of the other stuff, you're going to improve your health.
Mm-hmm. Now, I greatly appreciate you coming on, but I've got one final question that I've got for you. That is, with coffee, right? A lot of people look at it from the sort of like fat loss perspective, and they think, well, if I have a black coffee, it's not going to hinder my fat loss too much. If I have a little bit of cream, it's not going to have too much of an effect. But
Mm-hmm.
they don't really look at it from like a psychiatric perspective, in the sense that I think the defense compounds, as well as, well, caffeine is a defense compound, but these
Mm-hmm.
defense chemicals that are in the coffee may be causing lots of harm to their, say, anxiety, depression, OCD, those sorts of things. Do you believe that to be the case?
Well, it certainly can be, and the most important thing is how it affects you. And so if you can always try to come off of it and see how it affects you. A lot of people find that when they come off coffee and come off cream and things like that, they improve their health and they feel a lot better as well. Their energy levels get better. There is caffeine, like you say, caffeine is a defense chemical. It's actually a neurotoxin and an insecticide. It was developed by plants millions of years ago to basically fry the brains of insects trying to eat that plant or that part of the plant. And so, we're not insects. We share some, some similar biochemical relationships, and but so we get a slightly different effect. And obviously, we're a lot bigger, so we're not getting as a massive of a hit of this as the small little insects are. But there are thousands of other detrimental chemicals in coffee as well. And the same reason that you wouldn't eat spinach are the same reasons that you shouldn't drink coffee or other sorts of plants with toxins in it, is because they have plant toxins in them. And a coffee bean is a seed. A seed is a plant's baby, and everything protects its babies more than anything. It's that's where you generally find the highest concentrations of toxins are in the seeds. And that goes for beans, nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, all of these sorts of things. Those are all plant babies. And so they're all going to have a higher concentration of toxins. And the same is absolutely true of coffee. So sometimes it's better. And you say, oh, well, what if I do decaf? It's almost better to go the other way around and do just caffeine pills. If you want the caffeine, you want a little pick me up, why don't you just take a caffeine pill, and then you're not getting all the other things with the caffeine. If you just want the caffeine, just take the caffeine, right? But coffee has about 150,000 chemicals besides caffeine. And so you just want the caffeine, just take the caffeine. It's the difference between, getting like an herbal supplement and, or chewing on willow bark as opposed to taking an aspirin, right? You probably just take the aspirin. You don't want all the other gunk that's coming with the willow bark, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, the main thing is that, if you have, especially if you have anxiety or depression, the thing is that caffeine at all, any caffeine from any source can raise cortisol and can increase that stress response. And that can certainly increase agitation, anxiety, and those sorts of feelings of agitation and those issues. So the main thing is to do the self experiment, the N of one study. You say, well, you have this study, you have that study. Well, you have a lot of studies that say a lot of things, and a lot of them are contradicting. And the only thing that matters is what actually happens with you. So you take a study and someone makes a suggestion saying, hey, this can help you if you do this. Ooh, this will hurt you if you do that. Okay, fine. But you need to take that information and you need to make a decision with it. So the decision right now, you're drinking coffee. Okay. So if this has convinced you enough to say, okay, well, maybe I'll try it without coffee. You take coffee off for a month. In the first week or two, you can have withdrawals, you can get headaches, you can have screw with your energy levels, and because you're coming off of a drug, and so we're withdrawing and detoxing from a drug. So give it 30 days and come off of that entirely, and then see how you're feeling after that. And if you feel better, you have lower anxiety and you're less stressed and you're sleeping better, and you will sleep better, because even when people go to sleep, say, oh, I have a coffee in the morning and it doesn't affect my sleep. It does affect your sleep. There are a lot of studies, human trials and sleep studies, looking at caffeine, and this universally will reduce the quality of your sleep. Even if you're getting to sleep at the same time and sleeping for a near same duration, the quality of your sleep actually goes down. And so it's something to think about. And at the end of the day, just try it. And if you come off of it for 30 days and you feel better, great. And if you adding back on coffee and it increases your inflammation and anxiety and other sorts of issues, well, then get rid of it. I don't drink coffee anymore because I did that. I tried coming off of it, and I tried a coffee after, you know, um, several weeks of not having any coffee. And I just been back playing rugby and, working out. And I wasn't sore. You don't get sore from working out anymore, because unless you get, bruised and hit, because those inflammatory factors in plants that actually cause that pain, stiffness, and swelling, inflammation, and soreness. And so I didn't have that, and I wasn't sore. I'm like, this is crazy. And then I had one cup of coffee, and I was sore for 2 days. I was sore within 20 minutes. I could actually feel the inflammation building up and the stiffness and things like that. So that's obviously not something I want in my body. It objectively has, these different sorts of plant toxins that we're trying to avoid by not, when we don't eat other plants. And I saw a direct effect on what it did to me. So that's why I don't do it. Try it for yourself. If you come off of coffee for a month and you actually feel that it didn't really change too much, and you try it back in and you don't feel any worse for it, go for it. I've seen exactly one person that said that. Every other person says that they've just felt so much better, and they're so glad they came off coffee, and they tried coffee again, and they got more sore, and they had worse energy, and they had all these other problems, started coming back. So I said, yeah, we don't want coffee. One gentleman told me that he came off of coffee for 30 days and he felt great, but he was just doing carnivore for months anyway, and he just had coffee with carnivore, and they just stopped the coffee. And after a month, he felt fine, but he didn't really feel necessarily all that much difference that he noticed. And then he added it back in. He said he didn't really feel any negative effect, and since he liked it for social reasons and things like that, he just decided to go back and drink coffee. Great, that's really important to do that self experiment and see, how it affects you, and if those effects, if there are negative effects, if they're bad enough that you want to stop. For me, they were. And so that's why I stopped it. But, just try it yourself. Sometimes you'll be shocked. Just like the people that don't realize how sick they feel until they get rid of this stuff. Sometimes that can be the case for coffee as well. And when you get rid of that coffee and you realize, like, wow, I actually feel a lot better without this stuff, it's a good piece of information to have.
Awesome. Wow.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. I greatly
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on. Where can people find more of you?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Well, I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Anthony Chaffee, MD. That's CHAFFEE. Instagram by the same, Patreon by the same, Twitter, it's Anthony_Chaffee. And then I have a podcast. It's just the Plant Free MD, and that has all my main podcast videos. I try to do YouTube lives and post everything on YouTube. So there's a lot on there as well. So people can find me any of those places. And I have playlists set up for people who want to get started on a carnivore diet, or they're concerned about a specific issue like athletics and muscle building, or cancer, or getting started, and what sort of the core videos that are worth watching as well. So people can find that on my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Good to see you.